Hello. Welcome back to Mystic Motivation. In this episode, I really just wanted to have a cozy, open-hearted conversation about kind of my own journey and path to witchcraft and why I think it's so important, and just some of the themes I've been noticing kind of happening within the collective, happening within, women's spirituality, within the witch community. Just kind of wanted to talk about it, allow things to just move from the heart, and just open this conversation that I feel like is so important, so essential, and not talked about enough. Specifically being the segue of women, just starting their healing journeys and that path leading them into witchcraft, which was my own experience. So to start, I just wanted to talk a little bit about my own specific journey to where I am now. What led me here? I started my spiritual healing journey back in 2019. And during that time, it just felt so essential for me to just not have any labels on anything. I wasn't following a specific path. I wasn't following a specific route. I was just really taking what resonated with me and what I needed for that time. But progressively over time, just as the years passed, I found myself realizing that a lot of the information that I was consuming didn't really resonate. Like in the public mainstream spirituality, there were so many conversations about like taming the ego and having like a monk-like composure. And so many of the teachers that I was learning from virtually were men and their spiritual journeys. And I still love these teachers. I love Ram Dass. I find a lot of benefit from Eckhart Tolle. And I remember even at the beginning of my journey, like really being into like the Jay Shetty podcast and his history of like being a monk and things like that. And I really cherish these people and the things that I learned from them. And they helped me flourish a lot. But I found myself in a moment of realization, like I didn't have any proper teachers who were women. And I was like, why do I have this kind of sneaky suspicion that just like how in our world and society that, we're in a patriarchal world and information tends to be more accessible to men, that it's the same within these spaces. And so I found myself having this epiphany and having a deep desire to explore what I could find on women's spirituality. And I was once again kind of just like shocked at the more difficult, just like how you had to like dig to find this information, and it wasn't really like super accessible as it is now. I feel like there's such a boom in women's spirituality and witchcraft, and I think that's just so fantastic. And before I go any further, let me just preface, like, I understand that this conversation is so much bigger than just women, and that this conversation is so much bigger than, just women in witchcraft. Like, witchcraft is not just for women, but I just want to speak from my experience and what I needed for myself. And specifically, my audience tends to be women within spirituality. So I do just want to acknowledge that this is much bigger than that, but I am just speaking from my experience. But as I started to dig deeper, I began to find information that I was never taught. And I was led into holistic healing based on my body first, and just learning about my 28-day cycle and how every single week, we're going to shapeshift literally biologically because of how our hormones are changing. Therefore, our energy and our mindset is going to change as well. So learning that information was so powerful. I was like, of course it didn't resonate with me to solely be needing to tame my ego and my spiritual journey, because maybe that's just how I feel one week. Maybe one week I'm a little too inflated and I need to ground myself, but the next week I could be in my luteal phase and I'm supposed to be embodying the wild woman archetype, and I'm supposed to allow myself to be primal and animalistic and outside the box, and women were meant to have that expression. And just the more I learned about my body, my cycle, the 4 phases and the 4 archetypes that you'll meet within those phases, the more I realized like women's spirituality is so multifaceted. It's so multidimensional. There are so many aspects of ourselves that we're supposed to channel and work with. And that's actually exactly what leads us into our foundational state, which is being intuitive, being mystics. And the more that I learned this information, the more that it just guided me into witchcraft. The more that I realized that women who resonate with this energy like I do are meant to just work with symbols, work with different things based on what you intuitively feel called towards. That working with the archetypes was just like another way of working with, you know, the things you do in your craft and witchcraft. One day you may feel called to doing candle work, and another day it might be, you know, just working with mantras and chanting, and another day it might be just whatever. It just goes on and on and on. But we're meant to shape shift based on how we feel each day. We're not going to be the same each day. And it's different than what I was learning in the beginning of my journey, like as if there was one path. There was one way to get to your ultimate self, your higher self, your most spiritually connected self. And the gist of this, sharing just the brief snippet of how my journey began, was just realizing that witchcraft, I truly believe in my heart of hearts. Of course, being a witch is somebody who actively participates in witchcraft. But being a witch is also a woman who's empowered, spiritually gifted, and sovereign. And I've said that before in other videos, but it's true. It's a woman placing herself in a place of spiritual authority, which we don't see in our society. Using Abrahamic religions as an example, there is no woman in a position of power, right? There is no woman that is a savior. There is no woman that is placed as a being to see as like this kind of parental figure that is going to guide you. There's no woman placed in that position of authority. And witchcraft is women's permission to do that. And I could see, as my journey has progressed, this reclamation of what my ancestors, my lineage was pulled away from, had taken away from them. And we see this back when the witches were burned. There was this horrible propaganda that was put out there, who knows what it stemmed from, but some form of jealousy and control, where women who were the creators, both literally for those who could birth, but also energetically, were stripped of their powers. And these shamans, these healers, these mystics, these intuitives, these way showers were labeled as something demonic, and they had to go into hiding. And if they didn't hide, they were killed. Truly, they were killed and wiped out. Those who survived must have been very hidden. And this is what the witch wound is. This is what I've discovered within myself. My fear of even speaking like this, I can still feel a tiny bit of discomfort. You know, I've really learned to speak otherwise, to still show up otherwise, but I can still feel that wound that I've really had to overcome, and the fear of like, that I can't show up messy, that I can't show up and share my opinion, that it'll be seen as crazy, that it's too much, that, you know, it's not common enough to speak on, you know, who will think this, and like, what if this gets into the wrong hands, or what if this is misinterpreted, or whatever, that fear of being misunderstood. It's a wound that I truly believe comes from our lineage past, you know, whether that's energetically or it's stored in our DNA. Women were killed for being in a position of any type of spiritual authority, being sovereign, being self-reliant at all, trusting your inner guidance, was labeled as something demonic. And so, you know, just speaking on my journey in general, and to the woman who's seeing this, working through your witch wound, honoring your journey is powerful. So just first of all, acknowledge that. We're here right now in this energy, and we're able to speak on these things, and that's beautiful. Let's do it together through fear. Let's do it together, it being messy. Like, you know, I've really had to work on my fear of speaking out, and you know, being even comfortable saying stuff like my ears ringing right now, and I feel like that's confirmation, like getting comfortable doing stuff like that, and not being afraid to like show up and like 5 years, I can look back on this video and be like, oh, like, you know, I've changed so much. Like, you know, maybe I don't necessarily see it this way, or maybe that's not necessarily my energy anymore. Like, let's not be afraid to show up and change, especially as women. How I'm feeling this week, like as an example, I'm in my follicular phase, which is the maiden archetype. I'm much more energized. I'm much more social. I'm much more creative, kind of like ambitious, especially like my chart is 90% fire. So like when I'm in my follicular phase, like I really feel like kind of like eccentric, really like kind of all over the place, but in the best way possible. And it's like, why do I feel like I have to hide that version of myself? Like I only need to show up and express myself when I'm more calm and composed or something like that, or feeling like, you know, I want to hide certain aspects of my multifaceted being, my soul. So many women feel like they have to show up in composure. So many women feel like they have to dim themselves. And to me, this was the empowerment that witchcraft has really like cracked open for me. Like, who cares? You know, to even have the opportunity to speak like this, just do it messy. You know, and again, like I said at the beginning of this video, like I just wanted to come on here and just ramble about witchcraft, ramble about the importance of it, ramble about women's spirituality, and not really feel like I need to be composed or organized in the way that I do it, and just like show that like it's okay to be messy. It's okay to express yourself, to say the weird thing, and to honor that. No matter how it's misinterpreted or how it's seen by XYZ, whether it lands or not with another person, just show up. Just show up. Just putting all that out there, you know? And I don't know if I maybe lost my track on my point a little bit, but whatever. Just take it messy. Something else I did want to reference in my journey, you know, speaking about women's empowerment and witchcraft is, you know, I feel like I want to share this in a way that feels true. So I want to preface this with saying, like, talking about my childhood has always been something that feels uncomfortable to me, because I never want it to come across as, you know, trauma dumping, or I never wanted it to come across as harping on something or whatever. But I want to speak my truth, and that's not what it is for me. It's truly just me using my point of reference as like, this is where I gained my wisdom from, so I want to talk about it to use a point. And again, allowing myself to speak out as a woman, honoring myself as a witch, that all of my experiences of difficulty have led me to blossom into something that, you know, I had all the cards set up against me, right? During this time, you know, we're about to go into Mercury retrograde. You could be seeing this video at any point, but naturally things of the past are kind of coming up in general. And when that happens, that doesn't mean we're regressing. That happens often because there's a point of wisdom that we need to kind of reincorporate into our life right now. So I feel called to kind of share something that's been coming up for me, because I think it also relates to this message. When I was growing up, when I was a child, I lived in a really abusive household. My father specifically, he was very much like my biggest op. Like, he actively wanted to dim my light and crush me down. And I remember, like, one of these things that keeps coming up right now is this memory of how there was this moment where he was mad over something and he wouldn't let me leave the room until I insulted myself in front of him, until I degraded myself in front of him. And only once I did that, I could leave the room. And so it was after I insulted myself, I was allowed to go to my room and then sit in that energy of, not only was I publicly humiliated, but also I had said something mean about myself. And I feel like why that's coming to mind and why I feel called to share that is because I think that kind of just encapsulates what it's like to be a woman in spirituality, in witchcraft, in this society that's patriarchal. Women, you know, are naturally these great sources of like power and wisdom and creation. That is our essence, is creation. And I'm not referencing birth, you know, that is just like a kind of a byproduct of our energy, but like, just, we're creative beings by nature. And that kind of does reflect for those who are able to give birth in our society. What is it within men who are wounded, our wounded society that wants to see something that should be revered and honored, these beings of creation, women, and to want to degrade them, to want to see them as lesser, and to try to step into a position of power to degrade women. That memory is coming up as a reference to the energy that women need to awaken in. No more should we be in fear. And instead, should we see that those who try to oppress us are actually the ones who fear our power. And when we acknowledge that, we can stop placing these people that we fear their judgment, we fear the way they're going to perceive us, we fear how we're going to be seen in our truth, and instead, we just move away from it. And we see that being ourselves, it's worth all the judgment and all the people who could possibly hate us, to just honor the fact of what a privilege it is to be able to express ourselves, to be on a path of empowerment, to walk the path of the witch as a way to place ourselves in a position of importance, and just honoring that and not having to question and feel the guilt and have the worry of how it's perceived. Is this landing? Does it make sense? I just feel like this memory came forth to remind myself, and I feel like I had to share it with another, but to remind myself, I didn't know it then, but I could see so clearly now that, for example, the father I feared was actually somebody I can see now who felt so low, who felt so not powerful, that they wanted to try to scare another so that they could feel powerful. And it's often the ones who are shut down, who are made fun of, who are bullied, who are abused, that shine the brightest. And how powerful is it when all the odds were stacked against you that you can still reclaim your power and be like, you know what? I believe that I am worth something, and that it's worth investing in my self-love, my self-care, my empowerment. Witchcraft was that permission slip for me, the long journey to getting there. But it was that was a permission slip for me. The younger me would have never fathomed that it would be possible for me to be on camera, speaking to women, coaching women, facilitating women in these events, when I was raised to be small, to be shut down. And I want to use my story as an example, not to harp on the past, to harp on trauma. That's not what it is. It's to give a reference point of you can come from all the odds stacked against you, and you can still rise to your power by looking within yourself, and just from you validating the importance of yourself. In this society, in our society, we're seeing the fall and the crumble of the patriarchy. We're seeing it in our own lived experiences, but we're seeing it as a mass collective, right? Just like how I could overcome my own battle, you could say, with a patriarchal individual that was I'm up here, you're down here. And I could alchemize that to live a life where I create a circle, a spiral of unity with myself, with my practice, with others, with the work I do. You can do it too. And we're seeing that happen in society. We're seeing the patriarchal structure crumble. There's no more, the step ladder of we're up here, you're down here is collapsing. And we're gonna keep moving and shifting into a more unity-based society. Your work is important, whether it's showing up visibly or it's behind the scenes. You're creating an impact. Whether you have a lineage that follows you or not, you are changing your ancestral line from as far back as the women who were burned for showing up in their truth, to whatever your experiences were when you were younger, when you saw the things in your family that was not right, that was not just, and for whatever reason there was something inside of you that said, there's more, I'm more, this isn't it, I don't want to be that. That's something divine. That's something divine. So many are waking up to that truth. So many are waking up to that truth. I've rambled a little bit here. I don't know if I covered all the topics that I wanted to, but I felt called to share that today, to share it messy, to share it unorganized. I probably repeated myself a ton, but something I've really been wanting to work on in my journey, and I want to share vulnerably and truthfully, is just being messy, not having to be organized, letting myself be seen in every facet. I want to be able to show myself on my good days, my bad days, my chaotic days, my more calm days, because I am all of those things. I have days where I feel really quiet and I don't really want to share, and then I have days where I want to blab everything out. And today's kind of one of those days, and I want to honor it all. I want to be able to share my healing and self-growth journey, because that is an ongoing process and that will never end. And I don't want to feel like I have to hide, like, oh, I'm not ready to be seen yet. I feel that all the time. And this is my reclamation of, I don't care. I don't care. I have an intention of love and truth, and I'm not always right. I am not perfect. I'm far from it, but I just want to show up and try. And I want to form community in trying. And I want us to try together and to encourage each other to be seen. It's okay to be messy. It's okay to be unsure. It's okay to have good days and bad days. But what's important is that we are in this journey of women's spirituality, empowerment. We're in the path of witchhood, reclaiming what was taken away from those who came before us, and saying, you know what? On days where it feels too much for me, I'm going to do it for them. I'm going to do it for them. Thank you so much for being here, for listening to me. If you did listen all the way through, drop a comment, let me know. Let's honor each other. Let's connect. I want to know who you are. I want to hear a little bit of your story. I want to support you as much as you're supporting me by just being here, being present, hearing my words. That is truly so special to me. Be sure to subscribe and follow along for more. Let's build up this community. Let's empower one another. Let's open these conversations. And if you're wanting to work with me more directly, you can go to the link in my bio or go to iamzoearnold.com. I have services on there. See what resonates, see what calls to you, and let's just grow, heal, flourish together, support one another. Thank you so much for being here. Just thank you, thank you, thank you. Much love.